Time just to recap, what did we talk about last time? Does anybody remember?
It was how did the research sort of do?
Research sources, yes. And why are we talking about research sources? Because you have to think of a question. You're going to eventually write a paper. We're all doing this because we're moving toward a project 1. The deadline is very slowly approaching us. It's still more than a month away. But we've got a lot of work that we have to do before then. So last time we covered just how to search for information, background research, that kind of a thing. What we're going to talk about today is we're getting into what is an annotated bibliography. We'll also talk about, I didn't mention it in this class, but I talked about it in the other class. We'll talk about integrity of data. Or I did mention it, but I didn't cover it very well. Something. Words. Okay. Does anybody know what the word peer-reviewed means? Did I say this last time? Yes, I did. Okay. When it comes to information, I'm just going to hit this one more time because it is important. When it comes to information, the most important thing that you can have in information is the ability to verify that it is at least somewhat accurate. To the people who watch Star Trek and think that there are Klingons out in the galaxy, that there's no verifiable method. Yes, okay, you saw it on the television. You saw it on your magic box. It doesn't mean it's real. Okay? Similarly, just because somebody wrote a fancy story and used a lot of fancy equations doesn't necessarily mean that their research is valid. I could right now fabricate a bunch of research results, come up with giant tables of data that I make up myself. I could come up with charts, I can produce them, I can throw them together, and I could probably get it published. And I could even have a peer-reviewed journal look at it, have somebody read through it, and give me a good check mark and say, dang, that guy's a good writer. Just because it is peer-reviewed does not mean it is correct. And it is a concern that we have to face in science. It's one of the reasons why we value being able to replicate an experiment. Is because unless, if I submit a paper and Sebastian, you're gonna fact check this paper. I hand you this paper. Are you gonna try to redo my experiment? Probably not. Okay. Similarly, if I write a research paper on some famous historical figure who maybe you've heard of, you're not going to go through and verify every single one of my facts. It's extremely time consuming to do so, and quite frankly, me as a professional, I just this last week I reviewed a paper for a robotics journal, and I got halfway through the paper and I was looking at reference number 208. And this was the point where I told myself, you know what? Maybe I had better not try spending my time trying to validate whether or not all of these references even exist. Because I don't know if they exist. I'm not going to look at all of them. That would take me months to review a single paper. I mean, you can make the argument that it is my scientific duty to do so, but unless somebody's going to be paying me to do it, heck no, I'm not going to waste my time. So a lot of peer-reviewed journals do not have the kind of credibility that is needed. Well, there are some articles that do not have the kind of credibility that are needed to just fully trust them. Now, does that mean we completely distrust them? No. But it does mean you always have to be skeptical. Do not accept things even if, quote unquote, science tells you that it's true. Because sometimes science is wrong. I hate to say it, but being a skeptic means that people look at you like you're crazy. Because you can say, oh, well, somebody produced a research paper that shows this. I remember at the beginning of COVID, some guy did a research model about the about how far your breath spreads in air when you're breathing while exercising. He was a European scientist, and he had published a bunch of algorithmic models that showed spatially the spray of your breath as you move around outside. And it was well received by the internet. A lot of people came out and said, oh, this is terrifying, because he recommended something like a 16-foot distance between people when exercising. And other people are going, hey, wait a minute. There are a number of factors that weren't taken into consideration. First of all, this guy's research was entirely done using a computer, meaning there was no physical measurements that were ever made, which, yes, there can be some validity to those models. But there were other concerns like, well, were his assumptions correct when he did so, when he came up with his models? Was he measuring the correct variables? Was he measuring the correct data? So just because somebody produces scientific knowledge doesn't even mean it's accurate. And it doesn't mean, you have anytime you see a toothpaste commercial, 9 out of 10 dentists agree. Well, who's that one dentist who always keeps saying no? Like, toothbrush, gross. It's not that. There is dissonance in the scientific community. And just because something is peer-reviewed doesn't mean that all scientists agree with it. Doesn't even mean that all scientists think it's great. The beauty of science is that it only exists as a tool. It does not tell us what to think, but it does allow us to interpret data differently, which means you end up with varying factions about how things actually exist. There are some scientists right now who honestly believe that black holes are not real. There are some scientists right now who wholeheartedly believe that black holes are real. In fact, a great amount of the scientific community. There are some people who still do not believe they are real, despite, let's see, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, they even found evidence of the collapse of a black hole through spectroscopy instruments. It happens. There are still people who don't believe that they're real, because they want to see something more solid as evidence rather than just, well, it's a postulated existence of a dark entity.
Not to mention the fact that we actually have a photo.
Well, we don't really have photos of black holes because you can't see black.
Well, no, I mean, like, they got that one photo a while back, the eye of it or whatever, which is actually very, very...
They have shown, yeah, in enhanced images, they have shown that galaxies will spin around a central point, but that isn't the same thing as proving the existence of a black hole. Black holes, there are still some people who believe they don't exist.
I suppose that's fair.
So anyways, when it comes down to information, the best thing that you can do is try to only get peer-reviewed sources. Okay, try to only get sources that are valid. Okay, SteveSpanglerScience.com may have valid information, but if you want to cover your own butt, you don't quote Steve Spangler, because that means Steve Spangler is your expert, your go-to guy, your go-to salesman who has all that knowledge, who may have even written the Wikipedia article. I have no idea. A lot of Wikipedia articles will just take excerpts from other sites and just plug them in directly, which is plagiarism. Doesn't matter. Wikipedia gets away with it because you aren't paying for their services. Anybody can edit them. So that's the merit of a peer review, of verifying your information. Let's talk quickly about an annotated bibliography. Has anybody ever written an annotated bibliography in here? Got 1, 2, 3. Okay, not many people have at your stage. I certainly hadn't when I was a freshman in college, so it's not terribly surprising. But I'm going to make you write one, and I'm going to make you write one my style. An annotated bibliography, and I'm going to give you a sheet on Canvas about this. Basically, what this serves as is it is multifaceted. First of all, it is a list of sources. You have a bibliography. It shows you what information, where you got your information from. Okay? Ultimately, if you have information, you need to prove that it came from someplace that can be trustworthy. If you collected the information yourself, you have to back it up. If you didn't collect it yourself, you have to show where it came from so that that person has to back it up. That kind of a thing. Okay, if I say, oh, well, Sebastian told me that there's cinnamon rolls down in the cafeteria, you better darn well have observed that, or else you would better be able to quote somebody who observed that and pass responsibility off to them. And be like, well, I just made it up. Pretty sure they should, right? Man, I want cinnamon rolls and chili. Oh, dang. Oh, we still got like 35 minutes left of this class. I gotta think about chili. So, wow, how did I get to chili from a list of sources?
You were talking about being able to back up your evidence, and if you couldn't back up your evidence,
Right.
source,
Use the cinnamon roll example. I need to be careful about using food examples in this class. That is the fastest way for me to get really badly distracted. Next thing you know, we're talking colonoscopies. Which probably should not. Okay, let's just keep going. So an annotated bibliography serves as a list of sources, but it also serves other functions. Just a straight bibliography tells you where you got your information from. An annotated bibliography is a way for you to take notes on those sources so that you can use that information later. Okay, so let's say I'm doing my very professional research on cinnamon rolls. And I'm just picking on you today. You're sitting in the front row. I'm sorry. Sebastian tells me they're in the cafeteria. And they're as big as your head. Oh man, that'd be amazing. Then let's say, Jace, you're going to tell me that Walmart sells some. And they suck. With multiple exclamation points. Okay? Let's say Annabelle's going to tell me maybe she got one from Runza. And yeah, those were good. It's a great quote. She's pretty chill, so sounds like an Annabelle quote. So now what I have is I have a list of sources about my research on how I'm going to go about getting myself a cinnamon roll. And each of these sources has information that they gave me. I'm not just recalling it out of my brain. I actually have it written down. It's organized, whatever. And I may take this and I may say, okay, let's organize this further. Okay, I'm going to say, all right, when it comes to the size of the cinnamon roll, which is a huge factor, Sebastian definitely had some quotes on there, and he said head-sized. Okay, and then Jace didn't really say anything, but maybe Annabelle did say just regular. Okay, and then maybe I also have a section on taste. And here,
first one's just flavored cafeteria.
yes. Cafeteria flavored.
you can taste the linoleum.
And then And then I can bring in Jace as a source here, where he just says that his suck from here. So we can organize this however we want. We can organize this by location, which is what this is. You can organize this by, well, where am I going to go for a big one? Where am I going to go for a tasty one? There's a number of ways that we can organize this information so that it's more useful. If we just take this and I write a list of names of people who talk to me about cinnamon rolls, that's not going to be as helpful for me when I finally go to make a decision about cinnamon rolls. Okay, then it's just, who do I like more? And quite frankly, I think I have to go with Cole just because name similarity. So whatever you say, I have to trust. It's the name code. What's that?
Using his name.
Yeah, I have been called Cole many times. So if you've ever been called Kale, then we could truly be bros, but probably not. It's all right. I'm gonna need a moment though. So back to these cinnamon rolls. Really thought we had something going on, man.
Well, maybe. I don't recall the time I've called Kale. A lot of people.
No, nobody ever calls people named Cole Kale because Cole can be remembered. I've been called Kaylee.
I've been called Trevin multiple times.
That's awesome. I worked at a daycare over the summer, and I told them my name was Kale, and so they called me Harold.
What?
I encouraged it afterwards because it was amazing. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's probably the greatest name change I've had. So I can take this and I can organize this based on what is most useful for making decisions, for pulling information out. For you, when you go to write your annotated bibliography, which you're going to be doing with your partner, this is going to be a two-person bibliography, what you're going to be able to do from that is take your sources and you'll be able to organize them, and then you'll be able to put it into your research section of your final paper. Okay? That is the purpose of an annotated bibliography, is it allows you to take notes and then use those notes later. Now the third thing this can do is notice how I separated all of these based on different kinds of information. Okay? I can produce an outline from this based on how I organized this. In my outline here, I will talk about cafeteria food first. I will then talk about Walmart food. I will then talk about Runza. If I were to use this organizational scheme, when I go to write my paper, I start with size, and then I go down to taste. So just based on how you organize your information, you can get wildly different formats for your paper. And does size and taste matter as much as where they come from? Not really. It's two different ways of portraying the same information, just organized differently. Which one makes the most sense to you? So if you do your annotated bibliography correct, you should be able to produce a nice outline from it so that you can write results, you can summarize your results really neatly. Okay? So I am going to require you and your partner to do an annotated bibliography. Let's, oh no. I don't have any way of projecting up on the board. Unless I use this thing. Come on, drop that knowledge on me. Ah, yes. Let's hide it. We'll see how well this works. We're getting everything ready for you. Tell me more. This might take several minutes.
That sounds ominously threatening. We're getting everything ready to you.
You're about to get some. Get ready. All right. Whoever set this computer up doesn't believe in Chrome, apparently. Gross. Doop-a-doo. Yes, I have a very long password.
Oh, that's okay. At least you don't have to worry about when the password is too short.
Yes, I never do. All right, so under assignments, you will notice, and hold on, I'm going to try to pull this up so that the online stream of this shows too. This would have been a lot easier if I had just brought my link. You'll see that we have 2 more assignments that I've added. First of all, you have the formal interview, and second of all, you have the annotated bibliography. Okay? Yes. My computer has to be plugged in order for me to use it because the battery is dead. So we'll just burned everything up right there.
So, who has a negative 217.0 in the balance?
That's me. Which is not as bad as Joel, who's got negative 15,000. I hardly ever print anything out. That's negative 200 and some over a couple of years. So, if I pull up the formal interview and I go into edit, this is going to let me show you the questions. I don't otherwise know how to check the questions. Next week, we are going to be doing an interview for a research position. The goal of doing this interview is, first of all, to get you some experience in doing interviews. Interviews are not intuitive to a lot of people. They're very uncomfortable to most people. The first time I did an interview, I was terrified. I crushed it though, because I am fully competent at doing just anything. Not to toot my own horn, but I am the most incredible person you'll ever meet. At least that's what my mommy tells me. So it is really scary to go into your first interview. So the best way to prepare for an interview is to do practice interviews. And part of this class, part of the goal for this class is to study professionalism and how to engage in a professional environment, which means basically disregard every time I talked about cosmetics, food, colonoscopies, pretty much everything we've talked about in this class. Just ignore the fact I've mentioned it because it's not terribly professional. But doesn't matter. I do require professionalism out of you. I try to keep my lectures a little bit more lighthearted and fun because it's friggin' 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and quite frankly, that food coma from all that delicious cafeteria food is still just setting in. This is where Snoozeville starts to happen. But I do require professionalism because as an adult and as a future scientist and engineer, you will have to be professionals for the rest of your life. There are some engineers and scientists who walk around in open-toed sandals and jeans, and they do that for their job. Those positions exist. They're few and they're rare, but they do exist. That was the kind of position I swore to myself that I was going to go into after college, and now I don't. I don't really want to scar any of you by wearing open-toed shoes. But yeah, I blame genetics for my hairy feet. Oh look, another topic that probably has nothing to do with professionalism. Anyways, redact that from your memory. That never happened. When we do an interview next week, I'm going to be expecting you to answer these 5 questions about your partner. Okay? If you cannot answer any of these 5 questions, you're not doing a very good job as an interviewer. If you never get number 1, you're a terrible interviewer. Okay? Hi, who are you? Of course, then again, it's like, who are you? That could be an existential question. Like, who are you? I don't know, man. I don't know. I was watching iRobot yesterday. Anybody seen that movie?
Yeah.
I really want to show it in this class, but I don't know how
actually
to.
really like that movie.
Oh, I love it. It's so great. It's such an intellectual movie. But anyway, Sonny, at one point, when they first meet, Sonny runs up to Will Smith and shouts, "Who am I?" And it isn't a matter of, "Oh, you're Sonny." You know, it's a deeper question. So yes, I am explicitly asking for the name, not who are you, because that could, depending on your philosophical stance, that could be anywhere up to maybe a 100-page paper. Could be a research paper all on itself. I don't want to read that. I just want to know your name. Okay. Also want to ask you, how are you doing in the hallway? Never know, like, should I go for like the 5-word answer? Should I go for the 1-word answer? Does this even require acknowledgement? Do I go into an in-depth like discussion of my feelings? Gross.
That's what this fellow that clients at night. He ends up
But I have like 3 different pillows, and they've all told me to stop talking. I really need to get pillows that can't talk back to me. Okay, so the second thing that you're going to be writing down is what position they're applying for. That should be the same for everybody. Basically, at this point, for number 2, I'm checking to see whether or not you can pay attention in class. Because I explicitly wrote that in there, and I'm telling you right now, everyone's applying to be a researcher. Shocking. So, good way of testing whether or not you can listen. Number 3, this is where you tell me about your partner's attire. How do they look? What are they wearing? Oh, what are you wearing? Can I get a pizza? Not anything inappropriate, please. Just talk about professional attire. Now, what constitutes professional attire? For an interview's sake, some people will show up to an interview in a full suit. If you really, really want the job and you're working for a professional firm, you always want to dress more professional than the people who are interviewing you. Okay? If you dress less professional than them, they will notice. I hate to say it, but appearances still matter in 2020. It's not something where, as a professional, you get away with people just simply looking at you and not realizing what you look like. If you have a face tattoo, they're going to notice. Okay? Unless you're wearing a mask. Yes. So get all your face tattoos around your mouth. Okay? And then just claim to really care about everybody's safety. Forever. Until they hire you, and then you can just show off the face tattoo as much as you want. No, but they're going to look at your tattoos. They're going to look at your piercings. They're going to look at your hairstyle. They're going to see everything about you. And a lot of people will make snap judgments on you. I hate to say that this exists. I'd love for everybody, hey Kenny! I'd love for everybody to just simply say, what you look like doesn't matter. But if you show up to a job interview and you look like you haven't bathed ever, they're going to take notice. And in that case, then maybe it's not so much how you look, more how you smell. But it's how you look says a lot about who you are and whether or not you're a good fit for an environment. So it's kind of a really morbid thing to say, but your individuality is great. And it's valuable, and some people will, hey Kenny again. Some people will really respect your individuality, but some people won't. Some people want somebody who's going to fit in nicely with culture by not clashing too strongly with culture. It's not my job to make the industry change and be accepting of every person, although I do my best. I certainly hope that industry becomes a lot more understanding of various cultures. But it is my job to teach you how to fit into a professional culture, which is why I am requiring you to dress up. Okay? If you know how to fit into a professional culture, you can be one of the people who helps bring the change and helps make other people understand. There are people of every race, origin, ethnicity, sexuality, who are employed in every industry. So for us to say that it's impossible, it's not impossible. But they may not always be very understanding. And I certainly hope that that never happens to any of you. So I want to do my best to help educate you to be professional so that hopefully you never run into that issue. Really dark conversation following cinnamon rolls, but unfortunately I'm not going to lie to you. Okay? If I go in there with long curly hair, which my hair gets very curly when it's long, somebody's going to look at that and wonder, does this guy keep himself clean? Does this guy make sure that he prioritizes hygiene? If I go in there with really short hair, more than likely nobody's going to question me, which is kind of a shame. But it happens. If a girl goes in there with really short hair, some people say, well, maybe she's going to be really professional, or maybe she's really strict. They're always going to make assumptions. You really can't get away from the assumptions. So, I can't stop people from making assumptions about you, but doggone it, I can give you a good reference. And hopefully they ignore any prejudices they have. All right. Second, two last points that we have. How confident do you appear? How confident you are matters. And I stand up here and okay, all right, lecture style number 1. Sometimes it kind of matters if you're pretty confident, you know, like some people kind of like that. It's just kind of important to sometimes, I guess, maybe kind of give off the appearance of confidence. You know, if you're into that thing. That doesn't send nearly as hard of a message as, heck yeah, be confident. If you say something, it exists. It is true because you said it. Not because it's right. Which is kind of the mentality I take in class. Yes, I do that on purpose. Okay? It's not how confident are you. It's how confident do you appear. If I make eye contact, I look more confident. If I stand upright, I look more confident. If I don't talk about colonoscopies in class, I seem more confident. Also, if I don't make very self-degrading humor, I seem more confident. The way your confidence plays out says a lot about your personality and your competence. People who are more confident tend to be more successful, even if they have no idea what they're talking about. Because a confident person does something and they're easier at making decisions. That's it. And decision making is a huge part of every job.
It all depends on how you carry yourself.
It is. It does all depend on how you carry yourself. So, not only does your appearance matter, but also your appearance emotionally. Huh? Your composure. Thank you. I was trying to come up with the right word there. Your composure matters too. See, this is why you're my go-to guy in cinnamon rolls. That's terrible. I'm sorry. Your composure matters too, and it is part of your appearance. Okay? How do you appear emotionally? How do you appear when you speak? How does your handshake appear if you're allowed to shake hands with whoever they are? How do you sell yourself? So we're going to be doing all of this in an interview. Oh, and then lastly, how qualified are you? But whatever. That's a different way of how you look, but that's how you look as far as what kind of prestige you carry into the position. But
Experiences.
yeah, it's just a different way of how you look. Anyways, we'll be doing this next Wednesday, so please be sure to dress up next Wednesday. We'll be talking about how to do interviews on Monday of next week. Oh, come on, let me get out of here. So let's now go over here and talk about the annotated bibliography. Okay, so it would be a good idea for you to have done some research to prepare yourself for the annotated bibliography that is due in about 3 weeks from Monday. Okay, this is a document that's posted on Canvas. And basically what this is it's just a discussion of what is an annotated bibliography. So the purpose of doing an annotated bibliography is just it's a nice organized way of taking notes. That's it. So the important part here is if you scroll down to this requirements, here's what I'm expecting out of you. First of all, you have to have 10 sources in your bibliography. You have to have looked at and read 10 different sources pertaining to something that has something to do with your research. That's 10 sources. You could probably find millions of sources. So finding 10 isn't that bad. Now that said, 6 or more, being a majority, of those sources have to come from academically rigorous locations. That could be journals, that could be textbooks, that could be anything that is peer-reviewed. Anything that generally an academic would read, not stevespanglerscience.com. Okay, you can include that as a source, but that's got to be one of your 4 other sources that don't matter as much. Okay? Yes, I will be reading your sources, and yes, I will be checking to make sure that your information comes from rigorous places. Now, we discussed being able to organize information. You have to organize your sources into 3 or more categories. So if you have a source that covers non-Newtonian fluids, that's one category. You have a source that covers what is viscosity, that's one category. You want to go into polymer science, you want to go into cornstarch, you just want to quote Steve Spangler Science and talk about those magic growing trees. That's a different category, okay? How you organize your sources should make it easier for you to write the research background section of your paper. Okay? Under each point, you have to provide a summary. Now that can be as much as you copy-paste information from that source. An annotated bibliography is not something that is, I mean, you could consider it plagiarism, but quite frankly, for the topic of this study, if you have copy-pasted information because it's useful for you, great. If it's useful for you. Now, in your final paper, you better not copy and paste that same information, because that's bad. But you can do that for the purpose of this paper. Because in an annotated bibliography, all it is just notes. Sometimes the best notes are, hey look, I found this awesome graph in here. I'm just going to take this graph, plug it into my annotated bibliography so that when I go to write my paper later, I have it.
Technically, not plagiarism if you cited your sources.
That's true. That's true. Very true. Yeah, I didn't think about that. So there you go. Now lastly, all sources have to be done in ASME format. We're going to parse through ASME format later. ASME format is a very specific way, like MLA or APA. There is a way to automatically generate that. This is due 3 weeks from Monday. I will be giving you some time in class to work on this. I was hoping to give you some time in class today, but we have 10 minutes, and Yeah. Okay, so, you know what? Let's talk about ASME Format real quick. So if I go to libguides.doan.edu/engineering, at the very last section of this, is a tab called Writing and Citing. Okay? Now this has information on how to do ASME citations. You can read that if you really want to. It's fun nighttime material. Yeah.
Do you mind putting that up on Canvas?
The link to this?
Yeah.
The link to this study guide is in the announcements on Canvas.
Oh.
Yep, I did that already. But this is then the last tab here under Writing and Citing. ASME, this says all about how to do it, okay? Or, hear me out, there's also this really fun thing called Zoterobib, which is a lot nicer to use if you ask me. Hey, look at that. It says enter a URL. All right, so let's say you know, I'm over here doing my Googles, and I'm like, hey, non-Newtonian fluid thing, stuff. Okay. And I'm like, hey, I want to cite Science is for Kids. That's going to go in between my journal references. I really want to cite this source. I'm going to copy this, go into Zoterobib, paste the URL, and it will automatically generate a citation for me. Now, this style is automatically in MLA. You have to click on this and actually go search for ASME. It's the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. And look, there it is. That's nice. Actually, I don't like this one. It's another one.
I've heard of Easy Dude.
I have done that either. Also, oh, I can add this one. I don't like that one as much. Nope. Stick with this one. So it is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. Just change it up that way. Here, you may have to search for it. You probably will. And that's it. Now, here, the thing is, the important thing about sources is they have to be something that you can find again. Okay, if I just simply search for this entire thing, I should be able to find this source. If I plug in everything that has to do with that into a search bar, I should be able to find the source again. Okay, versus if I just put in the URL, that website can change the URL at any time. And then instead of, oh, I'm going to go back and check out my source because I really want to learn about, you know, Steve Spangler's got some stuff for sale, you click on the URL, it directs you to an error 404 page. Because that page no longer exists because they changed maybe one letter in the URL. And that's all it takes. So just using the URL to cite your sources is not sufficient. You do actually have to rigorously cite your sources. And this, to me, it's a lot of information. Look at all that information that is automatically put in. This is written by Sarah Winchell, December 13, 2015. This did get that information, interestingly enough. Didn't get Sarah Winchell, though. So I will have to go back in there and add that. Done. And now you'll notice that now it's got a title on it. Didn't include the URL, but you shouldn't need the URL to find it. Sometimes when you do this, you can have the URL at the end of it, and it's okay. Yeah. But it doesn't always do that, so whatever. But there's your source. Now, what I would suggest you do in the coming weeks, well, certainly by tonight, you need to get together with your partner. If you don't have a partner, talk to me. Talk to me right now, actually. Does anybody not have a partner?
Who is my partner? Because I never got one the other day.
You never got a partner? That's right. You were the one without a partner. I know Will Grixby doesn't have a partner. I will get both of you in contact with each other. Okay? He's currently in quarantine, so you'll have to email him. But, yep. I'm supposed to dissuade all of you from meeting each other in person. Yay! But what you will want to do with your partner is get together, write a research question. If you've already submitted it, great. If you haven't, you have till tonight to do so. Your research question should be something related to Oobleck and what you hope to do research on. I don't care how dumb your question is, but I would like you to do a little bit of research before then. Technically, you should be doing this research while writing your question, because the more research you do, you may change your question as a result. But I just want to see that you have some thoughts on it, and I want to know your partner's name, who you're paired with. So make sure to submit that by tonight. We will continue talking about the annotated bibliography. I will give you some time in class. Might be a good idea for you to bring your computer to class for the next few classes, because we can talk about this and we can work on it in class. Any questions? All right, I'll see you on Friday.